speaking of writing, you and Jhené Aiko, you were on her album, she's on your album. Were those songs, You Move, I Move, and I think hers is called Lightning and Thunder?
Lightning and Thunder, yes.
Yeah, were those written at the same time in the same space?
No, so I was asked to be a part of Lightning and Thunder last year, and I wrote my verse after they sent me what she had already done, and I wrote my verse, and we harmonized and did our thing, and that came out so beautifully that when we had finished my recording, which was originally a solo recording of You Move, I Move, I was like, you know what, we should have Jhené do this as a duet with me. You know how in the business we do swaps a lot of times anyway, so neither of us get paid cash to do the song. We just do it as a swap, and we work it out. And so that's how this was. And our voices sounded so good together on Lightning and Thunder. I just thought it would be another great opportunity for us to collab again. And the song itself just sounds like it should be a duet because the lyric is about that back and forth between two partners and that interplay, that conversation that's going on. You pull, I push. You know, that whole thing was what the song was about. You move, I move. And we felt like it would be beautiful as a duet. And then I sent, we had already written the song was done. We were already in quarantine at this point when I was executing the duet side of things with Jhené. So I just sang her part that I thought she should do in my phone and sent her a voice note and was like, here's how I think you should do the duet. And she executed it even better than I did in my little phone note. And she just sounded so beautiful. And it's one of my favorite tracks on the album.
It's your fans' favorite track too. It's got one of those Apple Music stars next to it in the album.
Yes, it's been one of the fans' favorites. It's been one of the most streamed of the new releases last week. And so actually it's the most streamed of all the ones that had not already been out prior to the album coming out. So it's definitely a big fan favorite.
The notes under John Legend's album in Apple, it says, these songs are about joy, hope, and resilience, which we heard John talking about earlier. And I think it's important to point out that, you know, in this time that we're all living in, John, you've given your voice and your words to records like Glory with Common. You know, even the record you did with Khaled, you know, when we lost Nipsey Hussle. Your voice has become a part of, you know, our Black current music experience. You're our modern day, you know, not to put a lot of pressure on you, our modern day Sam Cooke in some kind of ways, right? We're seeing you as this individual who's not only outspoken, but also leverages their influence, you know, to change our lives as the greater Black community, but even you've lent your voice and expertise to other artists, to uplift Black artists as well. Yeah. I would love to hear from you. I've known you a long time, so I know this comes naturally, right? Like this is just who you are, and you don't really, I mean, for lack of a better term, you don't give a what everybody else thinks. You do what makes you feel good and what makes your family happy and makes your people happy. That's the cloth you're cut from.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your legacy as John Legend. And, you know, and looking back on the things that you've accomplished and what you've done, if someone is not really delved into the John Legend discography and the John Legend work, what do you want them to know about what is important to John Legend as a musician, as a singer and a songwriter, and a human being?
Well, it really does start with the music first for me, even though I spend so much of my energy and my voice talking about politics and talking about making this world a better and more peaceful and more loving place. It really does start with the music first for me. So the music is the thing that I spend most of my waking moments thinking about. I think about it in my sleep. I care so much. When I think about my legacy, I think the thing that I think about literally first is the records that I leave behind. Because as an artist, we've seen some of our artists pass away before they should have. We've seen some of them even, you know, that lived a long life, like Bill Withers. But no matter what, the thing that's going to be most remembered for those artists is the music they left behind. And so for me, the most important thing I can do as an artist the thing I care the most about is actually making records that will stand the test of time, making them timeless, making them beautiful, making them so that when someone listens to it, it brings back a memory of a special moment in their lives that meant something. Whether it's songs about love, or it's songs about marching in the street like Glory, or whether it's songs about our resilience like Higher, or Never Break on my new album. I want these songs to be impactful in that sense, and be part of people's memories of these moments in their lives that are really meaningful. So my most important legacy is, if I can make great music that stands the test of time and that moves people and it impacts people, then that's huge for me. But also, I always believed that if I got to be in this position, if I was fortunate enough to have fame as an artist, success as an artist, that I wouldn't waste that opportunity and just do it to enrich myself and to make myself more famous, that I would try to help other people. I wrote an essay about it when I was 15, and I've been trying to manifest that in my life ever since, that I wanted to use my success and my fame to also make the world a better place, a more peaceful place, a more loving place, a more just place, where we can live equitably together in peace and love. And so hopefully I've been able to do that as well, and that'll be part of my legacy.
You know, as you pointed out, we need to take every moment we can to celebrate individuals like yourself, so that you know that we appreciate you, and hopefully that puts more wind in your sails and a little bit more pep in your step, you know, when you go out here, because I know it's, you know, it's a heavy burden, man.
Well, I love what I do. I feel so grateful. I feel grateful that I get to make music for a living. I feel so grateful I get to speak to the people, and they're listening to what I say, and they're supporting me. I feel so grateful that I have this opportunity to be where I am, to be who I am, to get to do what I get to do. It's amazing. And I get to collaborate with some of the most talented people in the world. It's kind of, I pinch myself sometimes that on the same album, I'm working with Raphael Sadiq, I'm working with Oak, I'm working with Anderson .Paak, Ryan Tedder, all these just, you know, Rhapsody, Coffee, all these incredible people that I just get to have be part of my art and part of the experience that I'm creating for people. I feel very fortunate that we all got together and made this album, and we were able to give it to the people.
One of the illest MCs out is a young lady by the name of Rhapsody.
Yeah.
On track 13, you guys put together a record called Remember Us. Tell me about this song.
Well, it's funny that it's track 13, because that track number will always have significance to me, because the first album I ever played on, I talked about it in my verses, was Lauryn Hill's Miseducation album, and my part on the album was on track 13, a song called Everything Is Everything. And so whenever I hear the words track 13, I think of that moment. And then for this album to have on track 13 one of the clear descendants of Lauryn Hill, in Rhapsody, someone who you could tell is influenced by Lauryn and evokes her MC style, in the way that she raps. It's kind of crazy that she's on track 13 for me on this album. And when I was thinking about what I wanted this verse to sound like, I thought in part about the Miseducation album and some of the raps on the Miseducation album. And so when Rhapsody gave me the verse that she gave me, I was just so elated, because it hit all the notes exactly the way I wanted it to be hit. She told the kind of stories and evoked the kind of memories that I wanted to evoke, and that kind of nostalgia that the song is supposed to have. She really gave it to us. She mentioned so many things that were seminal moments in our lives if we grew up in the 80s and 90s. She talked about Martin. She talked about Juvenile. She talked about Kobe and Shaq.
Yeah.
She talked about, so many cultural touchstones for so many of us, that it was just the perfect verse to think about those memories that you might have with a person.
John Legend, Bigger Love, available right now on Apple Music. Now, John, in the hip-hop collaboration space, I didn't know until watching Versus the other night that you played piano on Everything Is Everything. For people who may have missed Versus, which was just the other night, And track 13 on Lauryn Hill's Miseducation was Everything Is Everything. Track 13 on this album is the Rhapsody record. Rhapsody clearly influenced by the great Miss Lauryn Hill. Tell us how you ended up on Everything Is Everything.
So I knew a friend of Lauryn Hill's, and this woman, Tara Michelle, she ended up singing backup for me for quite a few years, but she was at that time just in the church choir that I was directing. When I was in college, part of the way I helped pay my bills in college was I was the director of music at a church up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I would drive up from Philly every weekend and play at the church, and one of the choir members was a young lady named Tara Michelle, and she went to high school with Lauryn, and she was like a big sister to Lauryn. And she ended up touring with Lauryn when Miseducation came out. And leading up to the Miseducation coming out, they were in the studio working on it. She was like, John, you want to come with me to New Jersey? They were working outside of New York City in, I think it was East Orange or West Orange, one of the oranges. And she was like, you want to come with me? And I was like, of course, sure. You know, everyone was kind of anticipating what was, Lauryn Hill's first solo album going to sound like. And so I was very intrigued and went to the studio. She was in there with Veda Nobles and a few of the other musicians and producers she was working with. Rohan was there, and they were all just chilling, creating. It was a vibe and, some smoke in the air, good times. And I was in there, just this 19-year-old kid from Ohio going to school at University of Pennsylvania and just excited to be in the room, but trying to stay in the cut and not get in anybody's way. So they asked me to leave. So I'm like, just chilling. But Tara was like, Lauryn, you got to hear John play. So I sat at the piano and played and sang a song. One of them was an original song of mine, and one of them was a Stevie Wonder song called Love's in Need. After Lauryn heard me sing and play, she was like, why don't you play on this record we're working on now? It wasn't called Everything Is Everything, I think, at the time. They were still developing what the song was going to be. But I played on it, and I didn't know if they were going to keep my part. I didn't know if they were going to credit me. I didn't know anything. But a few months later, I get a call from somebody at Columbia Records who was trying to get the credits together for the album, asking me how I wanted to be credited and how to send me a check for my little payment, session fee to be on the record. And when the album came out, I saw my name in the credits on track 13, and that was my claim to fame my entire senior year in college on an album that everybody, all of my friends were listening to. I was on track 13 playing piano and Everything Is Everything.
Amazing. You have a catalog that is so diverse, and your touring is incredible. I remember I saw you open up for Sade. I don't know if you remember that tour.
2011, yes, I remember it well.
That was amazing. How was the experience being around, night after night with someone that we all idolize like Sade?
She's a goddess. She's a goddess. She's a
Straight
queen.
up, right?
She put on a beautiful show, too. It was just beautiful. It was designed by Sophie Mueller, and it was artistic. It was, mesmerizing. It was enchanting. All the things you expect from Sade, she gave it to you. She sounded beautiful every night. The visuals were beautiful. The band sounded great. It was just a great experience to be part of that. And it was just a fun tour. All of her team was so good to us. When you tour with people, you start to see the kinds of people they hire, just the kind of energy that the people around them have. And she just had a great team, and my whole team really vibed with them so well. We just had great times together.
On this album, you get with another amazing musician, Gary Clark Jr.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan. He's a very, socially outspoken individual as well. I just had a great conversation with him for Black Music Month. Because I wanted to have a conversation. I really feel like we don't see enough Black people playing instruments in music, right? There's rappers,
and Black people playing
singers,
rock music,
and then specifically playing guitar, and for that matter, blues and rock and roll. So this year at Apple for Black Music Month, I got her, Brittany Howard, and Gary Clark Jr. to have a conversation around the pillars of Black music in America, which is, blues, rock and roll,
Yeah.
gospel, and all of those elements.
And it's often forgotten, how much we were at the foundation of those genres that aren't associated with us now. But we were the foundation of those genres. I love that you gathered those three because those three are three people that I really love personally as artists and as musicians and just the way they move in the world. So that's a great gathering. So good for you.
And I bring that to you because you have Gary Clark Jr. on the album, so I'm sure your love for him is similar to mine, not only because he's a great guy, but his musicianship. How did you guys come together on Wild?
Well, we knew each other over the years. We would always, we're Ken Ehrlich favorites. Ken is the guy who produces the Grammys. And so we would always be at these Grammy events, when they do tributes to certain artists or the actual Grammy Awards themselves or Music Cares. So we would always be at those events together. We would talk. We would vibe. My wife knows his wife. They're both, models or former models. And we ran in the same circles, but we had never actually done a track together. And actually, the first time I worked with him was when I was putting together kind of like a soundtrack inspired by the film 12 Years a Slave. The director, Steve McQueen, asked me to put together just an album of work that was inspired by that. So we had different artists, including Cody Chestnut and Alabama Shakes, actually, and Gary. And so Gary and I had a bit of a history, but we'd never done a track together. And when I played Wild for Raphael Sadiq, of course, our executive producer on the album, he was like, man, we got to have Gary Clark Jr. play guitar on this. This would just set it off and take it to another level. And we sent it to him. He agreed to do it. And that was that. Took it to another level.